this model's enormous. It's so big. I didn't realize quite how big it was until, well, actually until I was framing the shot for the tutorial. And I've got this new extra large painting handle as well, so that just makes things even more large to deal with. Anyway, welcome. We're going to be painting the Canoptek Reanimator. I'm really struggling with the word Canoptek at the moment. I can't think why. Anyway, what we're going to do with the Reanimator, just to make it easier for me to speak about it, is we're going to start by painting in all of the smooth black details, much like we have with the rest of the Necrons from Indomitus. Now, the colour we're going to be using for this initially is Terradon Turquoise. Now, what we want to do is we want to use this Terradon Turquoise as our pre-shade, and this is going to go all over the smooth black details, not the industrial black details, such as the joints and stuff. Those are going to be a slightly different colour. But the smooth black details are areas like the kind of central carapace, like this. We just want to get this Terradon Turquoise all over. There's a nice even coat. It doesn't matter too much if it's a bit splodgy here and there, because we are going to shade over it with some black Templar. I've actually strayed into an area that's going to be a different colour there. So what we want to do is we just want to keep applying this Terradon Turquoise all over. We don't want this to be too strong a coat, because I say we are going to darken this down with some black Templar. But we just want to make sure that we get this all over the parts that we want to be the smooth black detail. And once all that Terradon Turquoise is dry, what we're going to do is we're going to colour in all the industrial black and all of the silver details. And for this, we're going to be using some thinned down Iron Warriors. Now, all these industrial black details are areas like all of the joints on his legs and his arms, and any of the kind of like remaining spines, etc. So like that's, for example, is a joint, but also for like around here on this spine, I'm going to just colour that in with the Iron Warriors. We just want to leave the casings for the big glowing orbs, because they're going to be a slightly different colour. They're not going to look silver in this one. In the areas that are silver, areas like the carapace and the blades. And if you need a hand, just check out the box art for more. And with all that silver applied, it's now time to add some black Templar. And now what we're going to do is we're going to apply this in two different ways. We're going to apply the black Templar all over the industrial black part, so like these joints, like this. We want to get it just all over there. However, when it comes to the Terradon Turquoise areas, what we want to do is we just want to paint this black Templar all over the flats of the panels, like this, just leaving the edges. With that Terradon Turquoise shining through. So you see what I mean when I add the next bit down like that. So you get a little bit of an edge highlight already established. So we just want to go around, and we want a pot of black Templar that will just stay open. There we go. Just want to go around finishing off all these details like this. And with all that black Templar applied, before we do any shades to all that silver, we are just going to coat in the rest of the metallics. And the colour we're going to be using first is Runelord Brass, and this is for all the remaining flat armour panels that you can see around the model. This is like the legs, the arms, his face, his back, all of it. So there's a lot of Runelord Brass to apply. And once all that Runelord Brass is dry, you can now see the model's taken a real massive leap forward. And what we're going to do is we're just going to, before we, again, once we do any shading, we actually are just going to layer up the top parts of the bronze details with some Sycorax Bronze. And what we want to do is we want to use the Sycorax Bronze on this leg. We basically want to leave the bottom legs and the kind of the gun casings without any of this Sycorax Bronze on it. So we just want to keep the Sycorax Bronze. As I say, to the top parts of the legs and up here. And next up, once all that Sycorax Bronze is dry, what we're going to do is we're going to use some thinned down iron hand steel. And what we're going to do here is we just want to use this to basically layer up the flat of the carapace up here to make it nice and bright. Now we don't want to get any of this iron hand steel inside the battle damage and the recessed vents. We just want to get this all over the flat just to make it nice and bright. We also want to leave some of that iron warriors just shining through in that kind of that big recess there. Just want to draw the line along like this and then pick it up again like that, so we get that kind of different brightness as it kind of moves through. The light kind of plays across the model. As I said, we're just ignoring any of the battle damage, any of those recesses, just making sure that the flat is nice and bright. With that iron hand steel applied, it's now time to add some shades to the miniature. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to create a roughly 2-to-1 mix of contrast medium and Wyldwood. And we want to use this mix just on the lower legs where we've just left that Runelord Brass and not covered over with the Sycorax Bronze. We just want to get this Wyldwood mix all over like this. You want this to be quite a nice worn out. Just add a tiny little bit more medium to this mix I've got here. Like this. And so we're just getting this all over the bottom legs. Like that. We can also put this over the gun casings as well, that we've also just left as Runelord Brass. And then once that Wyldwood mix is dry, we want to create a roughly 6 parts contrast medium, 1 part Aggaros Dunes and 1 part Wyldwood mix. And we're going to use this for the rest of those Sycorax Bronze details. Like that. And we want to get this all over. Really working it into all of those recessed details, like the battle damage. Like this. I often find top tip for you. When you're doing this bits, you just want to make sure that you just finish off a section before you go rampaging on to the next one. Because if you don't, you can often find, because it's quite a messy stage, that your brush has kind of gone onto the other side, and then when you come back to shade it again, it'll be even darker. It's almost like you're doing a second shade, because it'll just dry so quickly. Just make sure that we've finished. Yep. We also want to use this mix to shade the top carapace. Now what we want to do here we want to use a smaller brush. Grab a medium layer brush. And we want to just kind of work this into all of the recesses, like the vents. And the battle damage. Again, it doesn't matter if you get this spilling out a little bit. It's just like the goop is smeared. We also want to get it all over the rune down here. Like that. And then we also want to take a small amount of this, it's a little bit too much, and then across this kind of central reservation, we want to draw a line like that. Make sure it's a good coverage like this, and then just wipe your brush off. And use your brush to just kind of pull it out a little bit, and then occasionally grab a little bit more of the mix and just kind of roughly pull it down like that, just to give that impression of the dirt and the grime building up over time. And you can basically just kind of season to taste, as it were. And with that contrast medium Wyldwood Aggaros Dunes mix applied, you can see the model's taken a massive leap forward and it's starting to look really awesome. So, just before we do any highlights, we've got one more shade to apply, and this is going to be some Basilicanum Grey. And this is just for all of the stuff that now remains silver. So areas like the blades down here at the front, and the main spinal column, and various little plugs and stuff around some of the larger cables and stuff like that. We just want to use this Basilicanum Grey all over, like this. And with all that Basilicanum Grey applied, we're now done with the shading. And as you can see, it's now looking, well, pretty grim. In a good way, not in a bad way. Anyway, now that we've done all the shading, what we can now do is we can do all of the highlights. And there's a lot of them. And the colour we're going to start with is Iron Hand Steel. But this is because this is the majority of the highlights that we're going to be doing. And so what we want to do with this Iron Hand Steel is we want to use it to highlight all of the lower leg portions of the model. So all of that Runelord Brass down there. We also want to use this to highlight all of the industrial black bits. So this is areas like those black joints that we initially covered with Iron Warriors and Black Templar. Just want to use this Iron Hand Steel to highlight all of these areas, as well as all the metallic silver bits that we've just shaded with Basilicanum Grey. And lastly, the carapace as well. So there's a lot of these to do, so it'll take some time, but it'll be well worth it in the end. And with all of that iron hand steel applied, we're now going to highlight all of the bronze areas with some thinned down Canoptek Alloy. And we just want to highlight all of these areas. And basically we haven't got any highlights on already, which should just be all of these bronze areas. And with all that bronze highlighted, the last highlights that we're going to do for now are on the black. And we just want to take a small amount of Fenrisian Grey, and we basically just want to apply this to the sharpest corners of each of these edges. Just like this. Just to give it that real impression of being a shiny, clean black. And with that Fenrisian Grey applied, now what we want to do is we're going to take some thinned down Corax White. And we want to apply this to all of the large glowing orbs. Well, they're not glowing right now, but they will be very soon. You just want to build up a nice strong white base for these. And next up, once all that Corax White is dry, we're going to take some Tesseract Glow. I'm going to use this on all of the orbs. So we want to use this Tesseract Glow around here, on the eye. And around on these big ones up here. Now I find with the Tesseract Glow, one of the best things to do is just to make sure that once you make contact with the model, just keep your brush making contact for as long as possible. That way it becomes a lot smoother this way. Whereas if you use lots and lots and lots of brush strokes, it gets blobby. So I'll demonstrate what I mean. So again, you're making contact and just moving the brush around while still touching the model. And with that Tesseract Glow applied, we're now going to colour in the cables, and the colour we're going to use for this is Warp Lightning. We just want to take some on our brush and just follow the cable round to get a nice smooth finish in kind of 1 or 2 big broad brush strokes. And we just want to do this all over every single one of the cables, but don't worry, we are going to darken some of them down because you'll look a little bit like a teenager at a silent disco. Covered in green bands, glow stick things. And with all of that warp lightning applied, what we're going to do is we're going to take some Ork Flesh. I'm going to use this to just darken down some of these tubes. So we just want to draw effectively some darker shading along some of these much larger ones. Like this. You can kind of do the outside. And next up, once that Ork Flesh is dry, we're going to do a similar process, but we're going to use some Black Templar. We don't want to use as much of it this time. We want to just run this Black Templar like this around some of the cables. You don't have to do this across all of them. It's just to break them up a little bit. And with that Black Templar applied to the cables, we're now finished with the Canoptek Reanimator. So all that is left to do is the base. Now, the place we're going to start painting the base is on this Fallen Castellan robot. And the colour we're going to be using for this is Flesh Terror's Red. Now, there's two parts to this Castellan robot. There's the bit down here. And there's the power fist over yonder. And next up, we want to pick out all the silver details with some thinned down iron warriors. And this includes this big girder here. There's a little bit of battle damage around the Castellan robot. As well as the odd little plug. Large rivet, etc. There's this pole here sticking out of the ground. We want to do silver as well. So just want to go around picking all of this out. And next up, we want to pick out the carapace of each of the little scarabs. There's one here on this girder. And there's one right in there of the Castellan robot. And next up, we're going to use some Gryph Charger Grey, and this is just for all the stonework. There's a bit of stonework here. Right in there. And on the other side. A little pebble there. And next up, we want to use some Skeleton Horde. This is for the skull. And next up, before we do any of the shading or painting in any of that soil, we want to add some Astrogranite Debris. And this is because for the basing scheme that I'm using, the final shade on the Astrogranite Debris is Basilicanum Grey. and that's the shade that we're going to be using on all these details. So rather than doing 2 loads of Basilicanum Grey, I'm going to do this bit now and then shade all of these details at the same time. Just want to get this Astrogranite Debris all over the base where there isn't any sculpted detail. And once all that Astrogranite Debris is dry, we're going to use some Basilicanum Grey, and this is to shade down all of that Astrogranite Debris, but also to colour in what will be the soil elements. So that bit there that we've left with the grey Seer. And also to shade any of the silver that we've added. And with that Basilicanum Grey applied, we're now going to take a small amount of Tesseract Glow and apply this to the glowing nodules on the scarab. And next up, we're going to give that whole base a dry brush of Tyrant Skull. I want to do this all over the metal, the rock, and when you're doing the Castellan robot bits, you just want to kind of lightly hit the edges like this, just to kind of unify all the dust and dirt that's swirling around this battlefield. And with that base complete, the Canoptek Reanimator is finished. And it's quite the centerpiece for a Necron army. It's fantastic. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to support me further, like these legends on the screen, you can do so. Head to patreon.com/warhipster or go to ko-fi.com/warhipster. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, do all that good stuff. And if you want to be kept up to date, make sure to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.